This tutorial is how to use adjustment brush, radial filter and graduated filter in Lightroom and how to adjust them to get exactly what you want. This also works in Adobe Camera Raw in a very similar way. Now this is just an image in Lightroom that I have in the develop mode, and it's some houses in the landscape, and I want to brighten up this row of terraced houses. I've chosen the adjustment brush up here in the top right hand corner, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add some exposure. So I'm going to go add about 1.5 stops of exposure and come down here and paint it on the houses. Now what you can see is happening with my imprecise painting is that although the houses are brightening up, everything around the houses is also overspilling onto the landscape and the sky and just looks a complete mess. Now if I undo that, there is a setting at the bottom of the panel called Auto Mask. And if you choose Auto Mask and come back down here, as long as you keep the central little circle of the brush with a plus sign in it inside the area that you're painting, it ought to, and I stress ought to, mask off the surrounding areas fairly well. And it's not done a bad job. I think that might work slightly better with a smaller brush, so I'm just going to undo that, reduce the brush size a bit and try again. Yeah, that's working better. So you can paint in just the areas that you want to brighten up, and the auto mask stops it from spilling out onto the sky and the landscape. At the bottom of the screen there's a button you can press which says show selected mask overlay, and that just shows you where you've painted using a red overlay, and it allows you to see exactly where you've missed little parts, so you can fill those in again at the end. Something else that you can do as well is, if I had made an error, if I had done that kind of thing, I can hold the Alt and Option key down on my adjustment brush, and instead of it being a plus option in the middle, it goes to a minus, and then I can go back and undo that error by painting over it, holding down the Alt or Option key. This also works if you are using the Radial Filter. So if I choose Radial Filter now on my panel on the right hand side and draw out an area here, for instance, just going to invert that so it just works on the inside of the Radial Filter instead of the outside. You can see here that I've just painted a light area in the cloud, but you can also adjust this by using the brush command on the panel on the right hand side here. So it means you can adjust it just in the same way as we did with the adjustment brush. So if I click on the brush, I come over here, I can add extra outside of the radial filter, or if I hold down the Alt Option key and turn that to minus, I can adjust that. And even in the areas that I'd lightened it with a radial filter, I can undo that and tailor it to the size and shape that I want. With a radial filter, obviously, you get a circular kind of motion, and if you want to lighten or darken an area that isn't quite that shape, even if you tailor it to an oval shape, you can do that using the brush command and this plus or minus effect on the brush tool. And this also works in the graduated filter as well, which I'm going to demonstrate on another image. So if I go back to my library and choose this landscape of a mountain. Bring that back into develop mode. With a graduated filter, you obviously choose the one you want, and I'm going to choose some minus exposure with this one. Get a nice dark stormy sky and bring that down over the image, which makes it look very dramatic. You can see what's happened is that this hillside has now become darkened along with the sky. So if I go back up to my brush tool that I used in the previous picture, I can hold down my Option and Alt key just to disable that auto mask for a minute, enlarge my brush slightly, and if I hold down my Alt Option key, you can see the center of the brush tool goes to a minus, and I can undo that extra exposure I added to the mountain. And because I have the auto mask on, as long as I keep my little minus sign within the mountain edge, it automatically masks this undoing of the extra exposure away from the sky. So I can still keep the dramatic sky, but brighten up the mountainside back to how it was. So I get the lovely sunlight on the mountain and still keep the dramatic dark skies. So if I just step back in time a little bit, you can see how when I added the graduated filter, it's darkened the hillside as well as the sky. But using that adjustment brush with the Alt Option key held down, I can take away that graduated filter from the hillside, so it only applies to the sky. So that's simply how to use the adjustment brush, the radial filter and the graduated filter, and tailor them to your needs by using the brush option and by using the Alt Option key to either toggle it from plus to minus to add exposure or take exposure away.